And I thought about this, that Officer King and Officer Lane went to jail. They served time along with Tutao. These two are officers on their first week of the job.
That's what I'm saying.
And I looked this up too. I can't find any other example across the United States, particularly not in Minnesota, where any officer in the line of duty on their first week on the job was then found convicted for a felony act and put in jail. No officer. Minnesota Mao.
Minnesota.
Minnesota.
Did you just watch it last night?
2 nights ago.
Oh, 2 nights ago.
2 nights ago. Big fan of Alpha News' work. Really like Liz Collins' work, and was interested when this documentary came up and I saw like the preview for it. I was like, "Ooh, very interesting," because these were all hunches that I already had about
This is what we all
what was
talked about.
happening in Minnesota.
Yeah.
So it was fascinating to see someone try to piece it all together. So
It raises a lot of questions. There were a lot
it
of
does.
there's a lot of things in there. I particularly liked the Fall of Minnesota a lot more.
Fall of Minneapolis.
I mean, the Fall of Minneapolis, because I felt like that was a lot more direct and specific pertaining to that case. I felt like there was a curated kind of display of all these different dots that you were connecting, you know, rather than just kind of going, hey, this is journalism. We're just throwing all the facts and everything, all the details from every point of view here. And you can at least come up with some like detailed conclusions with the factual information that we're able to present. But I think it was more over like, hey, let's just do a collage of here's this point, here's this thing. I mean, let's just say if you weren't paying attention enough and you just didn't care and you don't pay attention to politics or kind of what's going on in Minnesota, it could be very, very eye-opening. But at the same time, I mean, if you're on the other side and you kind of already felt that way towards Tim Walz, there wasn't really a lot of like new and established things that were really profound that kind of change almost the level of seriousness of the situation. But I felt like there's a lot of agenda base kind of built into it while providing all this information and connecting the dots to it.
I think I know what you mean too, because when you talked about the Fall of Minneapolis, saying that the takeaway was stronger, I think what you mean by that is that Fall of Minneapolis was an uncovering of what happened in the George Floyd case and presents things as they are.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
The Minnesota Mao showcases a lot of things that I already very much had a hunch about, and they did a very good job at tying things together, but there's still very convincing but conceptual connections.
Yeah.
Conceptual tying the dots. Whereas the Fall of Minneapolis, you don't have to convince anyone of anything in making conceptual leaps. This is the body cam footage.
Yeah.
This is when they called the ambulance. You know, this is it. Like,
here's the autopsy. Here's the reports.
Yeah.
Here's what the
So,
case happened.
There's no really spinning it any other way. And it was so convincing in the facts and in and of themselves, just the way they were and how much none of us knew about these details. We live here and it's like, how did I not know about this being how it unraveled?
Yeah.
All I saw and consumed was that Derek Chauvin looked like this racist ass Nazi, shaved head and had the name Chauvin. So it's like, oh yeah, I wouldn't envy his lawyer because all of America, he's the most hated man in America, and I hate him too.
In the
and
world,
everything.
actually.
Yeah, in the world. Like,
And we all watched
and
the
I watched
9-minute
it too.
clip.
And so I was like, yeah, this guy's an idiot. Derek Chauvin, what were you thinking? And then, so for the facts in Fall of Minneapolis, just here it is. Here's what's happening. Here's the body footage. For that to really spin your attitude towards it, that's what made it powerful.
Because that's what we wanted to see, is
Yeah.
the true body cam footage of the whole incident, of which we never got, which when we got it there through Fall of Minneapolis, that's when you realize what the true story is with what happened.
But the reason I found the Fall of Minneapolis also so profound was, you know, by the time you saw the first release of the 9-minute video of all the events that occurred that happened, you know, from bystanders that were recording, many of us already made up our mind. We already came to our own conclusion already that, hey, this Chauvin guy, there's no way out of this, you know? And then when you watch the actual, investigative report that Alpha News did on it with the fall of Minneapolis, it changes the entire narrative from the other point of view that challenges everything. And that's why I found it so astounding, because then you're like, holy shit, like, wait a minute, like something doesn't add up. And that's very, very interesting. I wasn't aware of this. And it really challenges your worldview of exactly what had happened. And that's why I thought that was so well done, so convincing.
And they didn't have to work that hard at making it convincing, because the evidence spoke for itself.
Yeah.
Things, and what makes it brilliant also is that, again, we all lived through it. We all saw it. We lived here locally. Your impressions watching it in real time when it happened come back and flood to your brain about, this is how I felt when I first saw this video of George Floyd. And this is how I felt about Officer Tutao, when he was telling everybody to, hey, back up. And it's like, gosh, these guys are disgusting police officers. You recall that visceral response because it seems so fresh. So that all floods back, but now you're seeing it in such an entirely new light. And you just can't help feel like, gosh, how did I get so like bamboozled to feel this way and believe it? Because it looks so convincing. It was such a perfect opportunity for someone to pounce on this and let's exploit this. And
well, Tutao came back on the interview and was talking with Liz Collins and told him how I felt, which
that was at the end of Minnesota.
That was so devastating for me too, to see what he had to go through, the time he served for no reason.
Yeah.
Like, these cops are doing time. They're losing time with their families.
I know.
And I would never have questioned why at one point. It was just like, of course they should go to jail. Look at the tragedy that happened. But then you realize these people are losing their livelihoods. And then I thought about this, that Officer King and Officer Lane went to jail. They served time along with Tutao. Derek Chauvin had the longest sentence. But I thought about Officer Lane and Officer King for a long time, because Fall of Minneapolis made the point that Officer King he's black too. So they tried very much so to disguise that fact. But then I realized these two are officers on their first week of the job.
That's what I'm saying.
That's my like bottom line and I looked this up too. I can't find any other example across the United States, particularly not in Minnesota, where any officer in the line of duty on their first week on the job was then found convicted for a felony act and put in jail. No officer. I can't find that criteria. And it's not that narrow of a criteria, where you have an officer on their first week of the job in the line of duty or whatever, doing something, and then again, being sentenced to a felony and serving jail time. Because that just doesn't happen. It's, you're on your first week of the job, you're trying to learn the ropes. You're being made an example. That's the fact, like, you can like or hate Derek Chauvin, he's the one with the knee, but still, Tutao, you serve time. I can't stand being away from my kids for a few days, few weeks. This guy had to live a number of years, and this is a burden on him the rest of his life. But Officer Lane and Officer King, like, they're trying to do right by their community. And then you watch the footage, and then you'll realize, I don't think these guys did anything wrong.
Like, what did they do out of protocol? Like,
and you've already been painted. You've already been painted in that brush too, so you can't live a normal life. I mean, you go out in public and people recognize you. They're gonna spit at you. They're gonna hate you. You're gonna have death threats.
Yeah,
it's because you've been painted forever in that brush. You're always gonna be known. Your image is marked into history, and that's who you are. Like those officers, even if they're free, they're not truly free.
No, their livelihood was taken away from them. Yeah. They aspired to be a cop. Now they'll never be a cop.
Yeah,
they were all made an example of, and it's like, you got a black man crying for mama, saying, I'm going to die, and a white man's knee on them. So, of course, you're going to exploit that and jump on this. And this is why Minneapolis has never looked the same ever since. And it's crazy to just recall those feelings vividly and now see it in such an entirely different light. At the end of the day, what happened sucks. George Floyd shouldn't have died. It's stupid. Life is sacred. That's the bottom line.
Have you guys heard the controversy that on recent news of what happened out of Britain? You guys, it's considered the actual real George Floyd situation.
Yeah,
it's exactly the same thing, but it's reversed. Yeah, it's happened over the past week or something.
It didn't happen over the past week. That happened a long time ago.
but it's
But
gotten
it's
a
come
lot
up.
of traction.
Yeah.
Like a lot of controversy. Everyone's discussing it. I think it's probably because I think the video cam on the police officers were finally released.
Yeah, that's why it's
And so just real
Yeah.
quick on short,
Yeah.
I don't have the exact names, but you could look it up. But it was
Henry Novak.
Henry Novak. He was hanging out with some friends or something like that, and then there was a Sikh man. I think that's their race or whatever.
yeah.
And in the Sikh culture, they are legally allowed to carry knives with them, and they're the only ones that can actually carry a knife with them in public. Everybody else, it's illegal to do that. In the same way, like guns are banned, but knives are also banned in public. But Sikhs are allowed to do that. So suddenly, the police get a phone call from the Sikh man. I don't know his name right now.
His name is Vikram Digwa.
Okay. And he claimed that he was attacked due to some racial reasons, like this white guy was racist or whatever like that. The police show up, and already the white guy was on the floor on the ground. And I watched the footage myself, and the police officers went back there, and they're like, trying to talk to that guy. And then he was like, I've been stabbed. He said it like 9 times. I've been stabbed. And he kept saying over and over again, I can't breathe. And the police officers brush it off like it was fake. It's like, oh yeah, sure, you've been stabbed. All right, buddy.
Man.
And then they grabbed him, they tried to lift him up, and then they handcuffed him too. So they actually handcuffed him there.
They
He's
didn't even lift him up. He was still laying on the ground, and they just turned him around.
yeah, they just rolled him over and
They dragged him basically.
yeah,
Dang.
and handcuffed him. And over again, he kept saying, I got stabbed, I'm bleeding. He's like, I
He
can't
said,
breathe.
I
right now.
can't breathe, just
I
like
can't
George
breathe.
Floyd.
I can't breathe. And the officers, they didn't bother to even check him to make sure if it was, what was really happening.
Yeah.
They didn't call emergency.
They already made their presumptions.
Yeah.
Famous said,
got-
yeah, all right.
Yeah, he said
They didn't
he
even
said
check.
like sure, buddy, or something like
sure.
that, along those lines or something. And I saw the video, and then they were talking to the Sikh guy, and the Sikh guy was like, yeah, he attacked him or something like that. And then supposedly the Sikh guy had his mom come before the police got there and take the knife, the actual evidence, and she took off with it, so they couldn't find the knife. And then that poor guy just laid there in handcuffs and bled to death. And by the time they checked, he already had no pulse.
Yeah.
He was already dead.
Mhm.
So then now the cam footage has been released, and it's causing major uproar over there now, in the same way that George Floyd's situation was.
Sure.
Because it was an entire racially kind of motivated kind of
course.
situation, just
Yeah.
reversed,
Yeah.
But they're saying this is the real kind of George Floyd situation where race did play a major role in this situation, because they automatically assumed that something racist happened, and they believed one side, and they gave the others, that one side, the decency to understanding them without understanding the whole situation and really uncovering what was going on. And because of that, it resorted in the death of this guy, who was the victim, who was the one who got stabbed
Wow.
to death. And people are just really, really pissed off about that whole situation right now. And there's an uprising that's going on because, Great Britain is in the lightest way possible of saying they've been invaded. Their borders are open. They just, so many different people from all different countries are just flooding Britain right now, and they have special kind of protections because there's a sensitive kind of government protection for vulnerable people that they believe, because these are immigrants and so forth, and they're trying to be as as considerate as possible, but in so doing, it's causing this entire culture clash of all of these different things that are happening.
No, and it already says it right here that the Digwa, the murderer,
Yeah.
he's already been sentenced to life in prison.
Oh, he actually they already went through the case and everything.
So
That's
life in
bad.
prison with a minimum term of 21 years. Digwa's mother was also
Yeah, charged with something.
charged assisting the offender because she hid the murder weapon.
Yeah, she took the murder weapon. See, but the thing is that that's not good enough, because there's there's got to be some accountability to the law. One, of course, the big debate is also, why is one group of people allowed to carry weapons in public where nobody else is? And then people are astounded by that, because people are like, the law is the law. if it doesn't apply to everyone, then it applies to no one, and that's it. You know, like you can't have exceptions or these things that are created, you know, that where you allow one faction or group be treated a certain way and allowed to do certain things, and another side of the group having, you know, to be treated differently. You can't pick and choose. Everything's got to apply equally across the board.
You were mentioning it earlier. I already knew that would. You mentioned earlier that the Sikhs have they have the eligibility to carry that for religious reasons, and it could be for the best reasons in the world. But I already kind of sensed that that's not going to end up well. That just naturally doesn't end up well when you have sort of the laws that apply to some but not others. And
yeah, I mean, it's very heatedly debated.
There's the recent uproar, perhaps more so about the guy who died didn't have to die.
Yeah,
that's the point. Like, yeah, you give all the credibility to the person that called the police, and you don't. The guy says, "I'm bleeding. I need help," and yeah, so that's probably where the uproar is. A lot of that.
That is the uproar. It's just the whole. I'm sorry, or I don't think you have been, mate. That's what he said.
Yeah.
When they like when he was sitting there dying, and to the fact that because I think they eventually found out, and they tried to call. Yeah, but then he just bled out and died too as well. So.
Because I think there's got to be something said where was there a poor judgment on those officers based on their interactions of the heat of the moment of the situation, or was it based on racism? Was it based on, nah, you're a white guy, you probably committed some kind of racist act on this person, and you just assume whatever else? Because then there's got to be some kind of training or some kind of accountability to something like that. Because again, like we said, that he didn't have to die.
Yeah.
If they just, if they assess the situation in the proper way, where they weren't just automatically assuming their own biased ideas around it, then race does come into play. Then maybe this kid would still be alive. They would have said, okay, he's saying that he's bleeding, he's been stabbed, let's check him. They checked him all. Oh shit, he is bleeding, he did get stabbed, we need to call emergency, we need to put a tourniquet on or do something to stop the blood from gushing. But it just looks horrible when that guy's on the floor and he's saying he can't breathe and he's bleeding, but yet he's in handcuffs. He's in handcuffs laying there bleeding to death. He shouldn't be in handcuffs. He should be... Emergency should be coming. That should have been checked before that ever came to be.
No. It's the fear of being called racist. That's what it is. I think that was their judgment. Because if it was different, if the Schee guy actually said, yeah, I stabbed him, I stabbed him because he called me racist, then they would be like, oh, if he stabbed, then he stabbed. But if it's just Henry Nowak like saying that, then the police aren't gonna believe it.
Could have been something like, "Oh, he's stabbed," but he's a white guy. You'll be all right, mate.
That's all it was.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah, and not to say, "Oh, systemic racism is not a thing at all anymore." No, I'm not saying that. But what happened here was clearly not in the same ballpark of what you guys were intending to overdo and overchange with this. Like, what's fascinating is like right now, this recent news is that they're already breaking ground and doing construction on the George Floyd Memorial Plaza thing in Minneapolis, where it happened. It's like a multi-million-dollar project. It got approved. Jacob Frey was the one pushing it. But the residents have to foot the bill. The folks there
in the local residents.
The local residents as well as local business owners.
They're like a city tax or something, or
for this. It's like it's kind of like if my association, the condo that I own, if they're gonna do something to advance this, you got to foot the bill. But this is different. This is
it's a memorial type of thing.
And you see the numbers. Some on the business side, if you own a business, it's all based on these metrics of how much square footage you have. But some of it's like $60,000 they have to put up for this.
Wow,
$60,000.
What businesses have to put $60,000?
And in a house, residential, if you kind of live there, that's closer to like $6,000-$7,000. But that's who has $6,000-$7,000 laying around just to. But there it is. Like that's the craziness too. So that's happening in real time. The response, because there's a lot of pushback from the community of like, we can't afford this. And then I was like, when did this actually happen? Like, when did this get approved? Who approves these things? Like, who said this is a good idea and this is the budget and everything? Well, it's pushed by Jacob Frey over the last year or something.
Probably Jacob Frey.
The city council has to then entertain it and they vote on it. And then I think the city council had pushed it back a few times, but eventually it got approved. But at anywhere in the discussion did it occur like, who's going to pay for this? And in the approval, did they just say, the residents will pay for it?
Yeah.
Like, is that how they rationalize it? Like, so you have to anticipate a lot of pushback. So then the pushback came, and I think the spokesperson or somebody from city council said, we'll do our best to find alternative funds.
Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, but that means nothing. Yeah. That's the point. Because it looks nice because they were on the news and they're like, yep, we understand the pushback and everything. Yeah, we're going to do our best. We're going to find alternative sourcing. Well, alternative sourcing only means it's other people that might have to pay for it.
Yeah.
Or if you don't find it, too bad. Like there's no thing holding them to the fire to actually find another source.
You can't say we're going to do our best.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. That's what it is right now.
How do you define that? You know, like, made a couple phone calls, didn't work out. So, yeah, residents, they're just going to have to pay for it. So we did our best.
We know that this is a burden, but then we'll they have a laid out payment plan, and you don't have to just foot the bill.
I would up and move the shit out of that neighborhood then. I would just buck out of there, honestly. What? Because even if you were someone who supports it, who thought this was a brilliant idea, who loved it, if you can't afford it, you can't afford it. People can barely afford to get by nowadays than to make this plaque. And then on the flip side, if you're someone who doesn't support it, who was probably on the other side of the because the George Floyd event was a very politically driven event.
It's a lightning rod.
It is. And if you're on the other side of the flip side of it, and you're like, no, like, it's unfortunate that George Floyd died. No one's happy that a man died. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, like, it didn't require the entire BLM riot movement of the Summer of Love and during the COVID situation and all the burning and craziness and everything. And then it caused this entire, friction amongst the communities there. And you didn't see that as a racial thing. And then on the flip side of things with the fall of Minneapolis and all the revealing of everything that might have happened, again, it's still too heated, like there's too many sides of that.
It's not settled
exactly
in the way that some people think it's settled though. But that's the point. I think maybe if you're progressives, your Jacob Frys of the world are so far progressed, this is already settled. George Floyd is a hero that needs to be celebrated yesterday. Why isn't this memorial already put up? This is because this is Mayor Fry
can pay for it.
Yeah, this because I think George Floyd incident, this whole thing is what made Jacob Fry, this is what bolstered his career.
Yeah.
Like this is because he's looked really crappy as of late. The whole ICE thing, the whole we'll never do this, we'll never let ICE do this, but then realizing it's not even up to me. So the whole George Floyd Summer of Love is when, man, Jacob Fry was on top of the world. He was the one crying in front of the cameras at George Floyd's casket and, this guy, everything. So I think he wants to sort of dip into that again and make that sort of a renowned thing, a lasting thing for justice. Like
he has to. It's so that he can. It's a reminder of his power. What he created.
I can understand maybe like, I don't know, what's a good statue? Martin Luther King. I think everybody kind of accepts Martin Luther King.
There's no polarization with that. Yeah. No.
There's not a polarization with Martin Luther King. People can debate and say, no, he wasn't a good man. But then at the end of the day, no, he's a good man. Everybody's on the same side. Martin Luther King deserves a plaque or whatever. No one's going to fight that. No one's going to want to pay for it. Yeah. Even then, that's going to be tough to force people to pay for it. Side of it. Yeah. But he's not a controversial figure where there's a division and ideologies between that, But imagine like someone like, I don't know, Malcolm X. Mm-hmm. That's totally different. Some people,
a lot of polarization.
There's some polarization. What if you did this big Malcolm X thing? I feel like if there's a polarization with something and it's still political and it's still heated, wounds haven't healed yet. Like, I don't know why, one, that's being pushed, and then two, why that's being forced on the local residents to have to pay for, because that's all. I don't get it. Fix the streets, The streets are dirty and they're broken and, like the ice breaks it all up. You drive around and you might just pop your tire.
They are fixing
the actual ice, not the ice, an actual ice.
Actual ice.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're constantly fixing it. They'll be fixing these roads forever. It just seems like construction's here every year.
Yeah, no, I got construction in our neighborhood.
Well, to bring in Minnesota Mao and how that paints that picture, isn't that sort of the playbook though? Because it's already presumptive that this is the right, justice, glorified thing to do is erect a memorial for George Floyd. Because we're already there. That's the mindset. If it's still up to debate for you, then you need to question your morals. But Minnesota Mao kind of talked about that too. I didn't know that Tim Walz changed the Minnesota flag. Like I guess it never occurred to me. Yeah. Like I either
There's always
forgot
been
about
that
it.
video where he moves it.
Yeah.
I love how they explained it.
It's
Though.
presumptive.
Yeah.
It's presumptive that this is the right thing to do. I don't care. Like if you think we should maintain the old flag, you need to question your morals. You know, like I remember they changed the name of Lake Calhoun. And that was a big deal. And I remember the story of why. And like
They changed to Lake Calhoun.
No, from Lake Calhoun. No,
from Lake Calhoun.
Do you remember Lake Calhoun? Like they used to be called Lake Calhoun. It's
I
not
thought it
called
was
that.
still called Lake Calhoun.
It's not.
What's it called now?
It's hard to pronounce. No one remembers.
Lake.
It's like a Native American, I think. And
What's wrong with Calhoun though? I mean,
because there's some historical something that made it so. The presumption is that we need to do away with that. And there's other things too. So like when Minnesota Mao, that documentary talked about tearing down the Columbus statue and everything. And again, has nothing to do with the merits of who Christopher Columbus was and debate back and forth, but it's just the act of we're presuming this to be the right way. So just jump on board. And so that's what you would think the George Floyd Memorial.
Wait.
We're just going to.
So Lake Calhoun is called De Mekelaska.
Yeah. That's why no one remembers it.
Scott?
Why would you call it Lake
Megbedeskis
Because it's spelled BDEMAKASKA.
I think it's from Native American.
Yeah, it says Dakota language, White Earth Lake.
Yep.
But why would you make it so hard?
Why does that matter? To inconvenience you so much when but unless it's the spirit of this whatever that is, that person or.
But that's what they were showing, how Mao was to follow you have to get rid of all of their history and everything and start doing new.
Presume the case. Just presume the new life. Don't linger and say, well, is this right to destroy these old traditions? Not saying you have to maintain every tradition, but at least think this through. No. Just do away with it.
They were even saying that the new Minnesota flag looks like the Somali flag.
Does it?
Yeah.
I need to do a side by side because I haven't.
Well, I mean, it's not exactly like it, but
there's a lot of
colors.
similarities.
Yeah. Wow.
It's very.
Look at that.
It's very kind of close. I think there's a value in preserving cultural history. Whether if it's especially within the country that it serves, like if it's statues, it's flags, it's traditions, it's that's cool. I don't get really gung ho or crazy when things are changed from time to time, if the public believes it, but I don't like it without like some kind of acknowledgement or understanding from the community or some kind of way to also preserve the tradition. But then worst of all, like for me, it's the whole pain thing too that just that pisses me off. I'm like hearing that. Like, all right, you want to make a big mural of someone. I don't care who it is. That's your prerogative. Like, that's fine. Do it. Make a big picture, a painting, statue, do whatever you want. You bring art and culture and you want to express yourself in that way because you value these beliefs. That's perfectly fine. But it's like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to make everybody else pay for it. And it's not cheap. Like that's a different level of enforcement that doesn't make sense to me. I don't know. That rubs me the wrong way. It doesn't make sense at all.
It rubs me the wrong way, very much so too, in that it seems like it was just kind of pushed in the dark. Like, again, I don't pay attention to the news every night or anything, but it does seem like I think a lot of folks should have been involved in this process of understanding what's at stake when you're trying to redesign the space. I think a lot of folks will argue that, well, this area needs to be renovated anyways. Is it just because it's George Floyd themed that people are against it or whatever? I don't think that's the case necessarily either. Yes, there's probably going to be some footing of the bill for some renovation because that area got tore up, right? What I also discovered is that if you wanted to appeal, because this is like you had this opportunity to sort of like appeal. I don't even know what that means.
Yeah.
But that time already passed. It was like June 4th, like
what?
By the time it made like public news or things like that,
they just pushed it.
You had to be really in the weeds to have this opportunity. Like that's what rubs me the wrong way too, because it just seems like
and who knows what that appeal process even is,
means or how much.
Like, oh yeah, okay, show up at this date, complain. All right, we got your complaint. Yeah, all right, let's move forward. Like, what's that gonna do? Like, if one man stands against it, does that stop the whole project and go, wait, all right, Mr. John here says no, so we have to pause until everybody says, like, that doesn't make it. Yeah, there's got to be some kind of regulation rule that's in place. You get 100 signatures or something. I don't know.
But that's the problem with all this. So this happens so fast, proposed, but why I feel like it's so shady is that the opportunity to appeal, who knows what that looks like, this empty promise to find other funding. This all sounds bad, even if the process at this stage was still approving the process, the policy. Mm-hmm. No, we're far beyond that. People are trying to appeal this and do this, but they already made ground. They're already working. That means
it's already moved forward.
They already moved forward with this. Yep. So this whole, we'll promise we're going to look at some other avenues that's their agenda. That's the thing. It's like, that's the bothersome part of it. Like, and maybe I very much just don't see it in the right way because there's all these other media's policies that like made it a fair system. But come on,
this is South Minneapolis, right?
Chicago and
that's South Minneapolis.
Man, I feel bad for that community and those residents.
There's a number of nonprofits in that neighborhood who are actually doing good things in this neighborhood and everything that have to foot the bill. Let's just
imagine you live there in that neighborhood and what the fuck? All this shit happens. Damn, that's just right down the road. Oh shit, damn, there's a riot. They're burning everything down. The whole neighborhood's being burned down and all that crime. And then, oh shit, now what? We gotta pay for this plaque thing too as well? What? It's gonna cost me thousands of dollars? I don't got $1,000.
So with all the fraud that's happened too as well, the residents still gotta foot this bill. Why don't they take that money from the fraud and put it towards this?
The money's already spent. It's gone.
But even if they find an alternative fund, it doesn't make you feel good because it just means someone else got screwed. Yeah. Like they're not going out and doing the work to create this money. It's just we'll take it from this slush fund that was actually taken away from actual other taxpayers' dollars, and so that's how it works.
I mean, the most convincing thing for me definitely was there's just something with Tim Walz and his infatuation with communist China and Mao. Like, it's astonishing. Like, why, and he's in power, but his admiration and almost everything that he does with all the evidence that they provided, I think their single message was, it's not America first. It's there's something influence within him where, he admires and the Chinese government because of maybe a lot of his history, of his understanding, his learning. I mean, for him to be collecting those books and all that, I can't accuse Tim Walz of any kind of wrongdoing. Yeah. But and I don't think the documentary does either. But it does really convince that there's something going on with his infatuation with Chinese communists. Mao, like
ideology,
whatever that might be, like there's something else that's added on to that.
Mao,
and it brings it back to the whole Mao, Minnesota, because it wasn't too long ago that I read a news bit, and I should know this a little bit more, but it was like a news bit about someone in California in a political position that was caught or conceded that they were actually working for the CCP.
It was Asian. It was an Asian lady.
Yeah.
Chinese Asian lady.
Who had already been enrolled.
I think she was a mayor or something.
Yeah, who had already been in a bunch of political roles, but then either got caught or admitted to it or
something like that.
But that's the fact, the reality that this person's been serving and doing all this in America, and then they're working for the CCP, you know, the Chinese Communist Party. And then I thought, oh, CCP, you know, I like that. Why does that always come up? Communist, liberation, socialist. And again, Minnesota Mao, it comes back to this because, again, all the ICE riots, believe what you want to believe, feel how you want to feel about ICE presence, about Renee Good and whatnot. But when I see so much propaganda rooting from these organizations, you know, socialist liberation entities, and all their propaganda is plastered across both Hmong groups, Somali groups, all these people holding the same propaganda together, sourced from Chinese Communist Party, stuff like that. That's the crazy part too, because then you can't help but see how that muddies the waters even more when you have the potentiality of it. I'm not saying that any of it, it's a mixture of all three, maybe, I don't know. But I'm just saying you have to give it some credence. You can't account everything, but when something like that is so prevalent, and I've seen time and time again, the work, their influence, boots on the ground, getting people to like march in downtown Minneapolis. A lot of folks marching because they truly believe what they want to believe, but a whole host of groups marching because people orchestrated this event who wanted this from the liberation movement, from communist movement, from social. Tim Walz, he ain't at these parades, you know, or he ain't at these protests. What was it, January 23rd this year or 26th? It was like freezing cold, and it was like a record number in Minneapolis. And
that wasn't a No Kings, was it?
No, it was the
ICE protest.
Yeah, all ICE protests. And again, you have this coalition of people who are anti-ICE, people who believe immigration rights. You have a coalition, fine and dandy. But in that same coalition, you have these other people too. Like,
so that's part of it. You have to change all of that. Just like how that they said the Mao, you have to erase all of their history and change everything. Because what if we do abolish ICE? Like, you're just getting rid of the old and instating the new with it, though.
Yeah, I mean, what it shows me is there's a vested interest from people who are puppeteering. That's what propagandists are. They're puppeteering and influencing attitudes about things and riling the masses, and have a very intricate system for doing so, and know the perfect words and rhetoric to incite emotion, investment, to paint pictures like Renee Good being this and that. Again, has nothing to do with what side you're on, but no, you are so emotionally provoked when you see Renee Good murdered in cold blood, blah, blah, blah. Someone from that movement created that propaganda piece to get you so worked up. And it's like, again, it's the word China. That's why I brought up China, because they're masters at this. And America is too, and Israel, and all these countries are good at this. But
they are.
But I'm just saying, you see that pop up over and over again. And so when the whole thing in China, or I mean in California, of someone who was in office was discovered to have been working for the Chinese government, then you can't say that these are just wild speculations of connecting dots that don't need to be connected. It's just more like, Governor Walz, man, I see you for who you are. You know, that's what Minnesota Mao is just like. It just validated a lot of the hunches I already had. But if there's like a direct tie of Walz actually in communication with someone from CCP, so that's what I would love to see.
I don't know. They said he went there like 30 times throughout his life, collecting all the Mao books.
I know, but those are yeah.
And you see the part where they said he stole like the
blueprint
for the tanks or something.
Or it disappeared for a while.
Yeah, disappeared. But now China's manufacturing these.
Manufactured.
I mean, almost same thing.
But again, those are, to your point, Collin, those are good conceptual dots. Nothing that really speaks for itself of that's super convincing, because a lot of the documentary was that. A lot of people's strong, very, very good, well articulated opinions that she brought on, but still like conceptual dots that you had to connect.
I mean, the most revealing thing with this administration was obviously the fraud. The ICE thing, you can debate that on every single end, and
every Democratic city is doing that. Sanctuary cities doing the ICE out anyway. So
yeah, you can argue that, you know, and everybody's going to have their point of view and their perspective from what they believe is right and wrong and so forth. And there's a lot of nuances in that. But fraud is just fraud, you know, like that's just bad. And then, you know, that's something that even Tim Walz can't defend. He's like, I was the book stops with me,
Yeah.
and but then knowing how much they exposed that it was him who was really trying to stop anyone who was trying to whistleblow this and reveal all the things that were going on, that there were threats and there was all of these different things where a lot of people were affected by it. Like it was almost, there was an agenda of hiding it. I mean, that for me was probably my most awakening moment, like
more evidence is coming out too with that though. So,
and then obviously, he's stepping down and, it's just, I just think that, my time has come and there's other ways I can help out, in the community. Like, really? Like, why did you suddenly, I mean, does anyone find that weird? Is it just me? Because this guy was second in line to becoming the president of the United States. He was the VP candidate for Kamala Harris. Isn't that, you got to be pretty popular to be in that role? Why would they pick you then? Why would they pick you if you're not of that kind of influence? And then after that, you're gonna step down now, like
from all political life, right?
From all political life,
because he was told by the higher ups, "Hey, Tim, you fucked up. There's nothing you can do.
You can't redeem what you've done." Like,
like
exactly.
you're gonna have to step down. Like, we don't want you in there. And just like, all right, I guess I'll let the public know tomorrow. I feel like that's exactly what happened, because he kind of just stepped down out of nowhere after saying that he was gonna run again, for a third term. So.
But I mean, but what I'm saying is that's almost an admission of guilt, of something happening or something going on. Maybe we just haven't really uncovered yet, or that's coming up in the future.
Yeah,
it's almost an admission of guilt, because it's like logically that doesn't make sense. Like, you're on this political role and you've been nominated to be this candidate for VP of Kamala Harris and everything. Like,
it should be sort of kind of like the peak of your
exactly. It should
your
be
political
the peak.
career.
You should be rolling. You should be winning your seat again, like through flying colors. If that's the case, it should be a no contest for you. So why would you just suddenly out of nowhere just step down? It's almost like a guilt. It's a mission of guilt. Like, there's something else going on. Like, I don't know. I find it just really awkward and weird.
Because you make a good case, because that's right. It's, people forget, because it's easy to just dismiss. Well, he's been through a lot, and like, he's older too, and he doesn't want to. He's been through a lot, and the reality is he's just being measured. He knows he's not gonna win again, and even if deep down in his heart, none of this was actually Tim Walz's fault, but the fact that it's already gone so far, there's just no way he's gonna win. So he's just making a sensible decision. So I could see there's that, but to your point, it's like, you're on the peak of your career. You were gonna run again, and then you even said you were gonna run again, and then just decide out of nowhere not to. It's kind of weird how things have like shifted up and down at just like a drop of a dime. Like, because he was gonna run, everything's going, but then what was it? Something critical that happened where it's just like, all right, I'm not gonna run again. It was probably the fraud, or is it the ICE hoopla?
It was a combination of all that, but I think it's more so the fraud side.
Yeah.
I think it's
that's gotta be the fraud.
Yeah, once that came into play, he got really quiet for a while, and then the ICE thing came in, and he kind of just like,
he tried to be someone like a fighter, but it was kind of the same thing where I remember when Alex Preddy was shot and he died, it felt like Tim Walz had his card he could play now. Like, there it is. ICE.
He was begging for this card to play.
Yeah, he was trying to, in my view, trying to create the conditions for this card to kind of play so that you can say, look, 2 deaths now, ICE, get the F out, But it was like shortly after that then Tom Homan came, and then they just sort of conceded. Governor Walz and Frere was like, okay, yeah, we can't do that. Okay, we'll make sure our police officers also, at least, guard the crowds and not let people encounter this, because they're supposed to do that. And so they just kind of gave us. So it was like a drop of a dime where you would think that that'd be the case. But
I mean, if he was going to give up now, I mean, what kind of VP would he been?
Yeah, I was thinking that. I was thinking that. Like, this whole world, I think, would look so different if Kamala Harris and Tim Walz were president. And I say that in both good and bad ways too. I don't think we'd be at war with Iran. I don't know. Maybe. No, I can't say that.
No, because even Kamala said in her interviews that the biggest threat to America is Iran.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But I'm just throwing out the picture. But I'm just saying, like, the whole country would look so different. And
I think it would look like all these European countries
yeah.
that are happening right now, where they're just getting taken over by immigration, their cultures and history, everything just being
swallowed up.
Swallowed
Yeah, because no one knew the pace at which the immigration rates were happening until you actually finally look at it after the fact. Had Kamala had won, I don't think I would have been that invested in looking at, well, what actually happened during Biden's administration? What were the numbers? I would have just thought, yeah, life is the same again. It was Biden now, Kamala Harris has won. And then life would just continue to go down that path of, the wokeism path. And then, so, and those pretty much, it's like the floodgates are open, you wouldn't know it. And the society's changing around you. Because I didn't see it happening. Well, I noticed it happening during the Biden administration, but I didn't really see the numbers and actually figuring out what actually was happening.
I never knew we had an immigration problem. I didn't see that the whole United States, or let alone the whole world, with all the European countries and everything else, was having an immigration problem.
Yeah, not just the United
States
States
for a while.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't until just recent for me, but
yeah. No, I've been watching that stuff for quite some time. I think if Kamala won, they would just be a continuation of Joe Biden.
Yeah.
That's all it would be.
Yeah.
And I think there would have been a lot more pressure around speech. I think the press and the speech would be a lot more challenging and difficult with speech police, and you can say this and can't say that. There would be a lot more pressure around cultural aspects and diversity and DEI initiatives that would be a lot more heavier. So
more nonprofits.
Yeah, and then beyond that, everything else would have remained the same. Our borders would have been continued to be open.
Yeah.
It'd still be flooding. We'd be still pumping money into Ukraine constantly, like every so months.
Mm-hmm. I say the money being pumped would have been more, even at the more closer level of the state. More of the same abuse of the system of fraud, like abuse of the easy money to be made when government hands out these reimbursements for services you provide, all this, the easy exploitation, that would have been the norm again, or it would have continued to be. Now there's a lot of watch on it. Now it's been raised as a real issue finally, but it would have been more of that sort of under the radar type stuff. And we would have never known. We just see this sort of everything deteriorate around you, but
so do you think that's why we're in this situation right now, where a tax is a tax and the citizens of the population have to pay the tax? It's not no, I'm not going to pay it, So it's a constant revenue for these government agencies to use this money for its people, but instead they're just frauding it out, filtering it out, and saying it's going to this nonprofit, doing all this. But the money just keeps coming in for them regardless every year, because people are always just going to pay their taxes. But they feel like they know what's best on how this money should be used. Because of that, cities are being torn down, or shit just isn't right. And then they start pointing fingers and saying it's because of this and because of that. But in the end, your average Joe like us was just like, wow, taxes going up? All right, whatever. Most people are just like, whatever, man. Life is hard, man.
It is what it is. Yeah.
I mean, everything's expensive and stuff like that, but it is just what it is.
Yeah.
See, that's why I don't know. When I see these No Kings March, when I see the no protests, ICE out marches, I mean, there's supposedly some of these record numbers we haven't seen since like the 60s or something like that. For me, it's all orchestrated. It's all organized. It's somebody else sponsoring all of that. Maybe it's the CCP. Maybe it's whoever. I don't even know. Because I feel like if it was a grassroots movement of people, I mean, people are smart enough than just holding signs and walking down the street. I'm not saying that some of those people out there were just real people. Of course,
there's a lot of just real people too.
Yeah, they were influenced by it, but it was organized somewhere else and sponsored somewhere else.
All the energy, all the movement.
Energy
is paid energy. Yeah, that's what it is.
So I would imagine collectively, like a real revolution in a movement would just be let's all stop paying taxes. Let's get I don't know, what was the number? Like 9 million people that were marching. What if 9 million people stop paying taxes? What are you going to do? Lock up 9 million people? Chase them all down? Put them fines? Oh, they're never going to pay it. You can't put them all in jail.
Enough people in numbers.
Yeah.
And just...
What if all the people who have these gigantic school loans, 9 million people who owe school loans,
student
just stop
debt,
paying? What are you going to do? Like, are you going to put them all in jail? You're going to come after them? Like, you can't stop. I mean, that's a real revolution. If it came from the true grassroots of people, that's the kind of revolution I would imagine that people, because people aren't that dumb. People aren't just going to walk through the streets and hold up signs and shit. Then what's that going to do? Oh, what are we doing? What are you trying to accomplish? So we get recognition and we can voice ourselves? Like, that's not going to do nothing. Like, do a real revolution. Just stop paying your shit, you know? Like, again, they can't come after all of us. I'm not trying to invoke an insurrection or anything at all, but I'm just saying, like, for me, that would seem like something that's more real. I don't know how they would organize that or how that would work.
That would be very difficult, though,
to pull off.
How can you convince everybody just to stop paying for their taxes? Unless
it's a trust factor. It's like,
unless
are you going to pay
like
yours?
Donald Trump just saying, hey,
I'm not going to pay mine. If you don't pay yours, I won't pay mine.
Well, everything has to land in a narrative. The reason why there's a no kings is because there's a narrative of the whole fascist king. Yeah. So the narrative is sank so well, so you can get that. If you can get the narrative, and I was trying to think of that. So like, I don't think that many people would march just so that they can not pay taxes because they feel like, I want to keep my money. They're not enough people. They're just going to be like, no. So a lot of people would probably be like, tax is a good thing. You should probably pay it.
And that's the thing. Tax is a good thing.
So the story has to be, and based on real stories, just the realities of government funding, the fact that government splurge on things or are careless about the dollars, and they go into these fraud systems because it's bankable money that'll always come in. They're not good stewards of our money. That's the point. That's what you should protest. Yeah. The stewardship of the money. Plus this notion that the federal government, $39 trillion in debt. You have this debt. This debt is from your budget, your spending and all that. But you got all this money coming from American taxpayers. So you have debt in these other ways because you're also being irresponsible with the country, as in like you're in this debt beyond what American tax dollars have already provided you. So there's something to be said there. Like, not only are not good stewards of our money, but you keep driving the country into the ground with hordes of debt so that you can run your policy, your plan, your budget and everything.
Yeah, they're just cavalier with it. They don't give a shit, you know? Yeah. Like, it's not just to say, I don't want to pay taxes just because I don't want to pay taxes, you know? But it's because they're being cavalier with it. It's because they're being careless with it. They're spending endlessly on shit that we never cared for or approved. And that's why a collective amount of people started coming together and then they stopped paying taxes. Or a bunch of people actually went back and said, no, we got screwed by the entire system of education. You know, like, we didn't earn the degrees that we were expected to supposedly earn. We were not given the jobs that these degrees promised us. And in fact, these degrees were costing us 10, 15, 20 times more than what its standardized degree should have cost. But because it was funded by government funding or whatever, they raised prices. Everybody walked away with huge, gigantic profits. And all these young adults got stuck with the tab of these ridiculous for life bills that they have to pay with extreme interest rates.
Like
things like credit cards. Yeah, it's generational debt.
And unforgivable.
And unforgivable. Like, why is that? That's what you should protest. That's the emotional appeal. Why do people like bankers who are irresponsible with money get bailed? People who splurge and go into bankruptcy aren't responsible. They get bailed. You can file bankruptcy. You can forgive all these debts, but student debt will chase you for life because you wanted to educate yourself. You wanted a better life for applying yourself to something. But now
I would sell my bachelor's degree back. So, I don't care. Give me all the money back that I paid for it. You can have it back. I will never put it on my resume again. I'll just say I'm a high school. That's it.
That's a interesting concept too, because that's what it is. Like, let's just say it's $100,000 a year, your bachelor's degree. That's not what you paid for that. Yeah. But the only asset, like, you can't sell it back.
There's no resale value at all.
You can sell it back.
I can't even throw it away and feel happy about it. You know, it's just sitting there. You always have to use it.
No, but
that's how it is, man. It's just
it's the stewardship of money.
The stewardship. You get a bunch of money. You're happy. It's like getting your check. You get paid that day. Oh, payday. I want to go buy this and buy that, but you're still in debt. But you're just like, I'll just I'll just get more debt because I just want to go buy shit right now. You know, that's all that they're doing. All I would say, just give us more transparency. That's why I was like so hopeful that Doge would do it all the way down to the state and local levels too as well. Just transparency of everything, where our money's going. And if we tax it, hey, we paid a lot on taxes, but our budgeting that we approved on, that all these check marks of all the things and organizations and stuff that we want to do, we checked on, we still have a surplus of tax. Hey, here goes a refund back of that tax money back to you, you know? Because if we don't have a decision on where this money is being used, and all that is happening is just people either stealing the money or just putting it towards something else, like a nonprofit or something like that, then you're right. I don't want to pay taxes no more, you know? Like,
I mean, what does it say? What does it say about our nation and our government and our taxes and funds when something like Doge is not a standardization? It should be standard.
Yeah,
it's
not
not
common sense.
Common sense.
You know, hate or love Elon, something like that. Accountability to the system, to the numbers should be a standardized thing.
It should be a standard thing.
We don't live in an age where everything is pencil and paper anymore, where it's so hard to, how are we going to keep up with it? We have digital things that can keep track of all of
For
that.
all the money that is being spent, money can be spent on hiring a group that just does this consistently. And again, what I mean by standardization, it's like, no, you're not reinvestigating yourselves. You know, you're not putting another branch of government to investigate your own government. No, this has to come from a outsider, third party, you know, full audit of all of the expenditures of what's being spent within government, whether that's on the state level or the federal level. Why isn't that just not a standardization?
That's just being good with your finances.
That's just being accountable.
Well, and let's just remove fraud out of the picture. Let's not say we're pointing out bad guys and just being, you know, doing a witch hunt. No, it's just efficiencies. The government is so inefficient. Like,
I bet you can get AI to do your government, all that.
So it's just inefficiencies. So love or hate Doge or Elon, doesn't matter. The inefficiencies that exist are just not sustainable. It's stupid. It's waste.
Yeah.
But you can only act with this sort of wasteful sort of attitude when you feel like you have this bankable money that's always coming in. It's just monopoly money. So then when you find out fraud is happening here and there, you don't really care about the fraud and the money. You just care that it doesn't come out. Like, that's it. But all this money going to those folks, and then your tax dollars or your votes come back to you. But that's the money. Yeah.
But that's why it's so hard for Americans to live right now. You pay so much taxes for shit that you don't need. But now the government is saying, hey, we need more from you guys because we spent it on this, you know, like, give us that George Floyd memorial. You know, we need that money to come in.
Another one ties back to a very socialist perspective. Family leave that was passed recently is, again, out of the sort of that spirit of it should be a social responsibility to take care of those that when they need time off. And that's, again, it's not whether you agree with or support the policy or not. It's just more governmental inner workings of them coming in and deciding things and society paying for it, and then the government also approving each one too. The government decides who gets approved for this, and
I mean, just keep track of it, especially like all the fraud that's happening in Minnesota. Why hasn't someone like been keeping track of it? How has it gone this far? And millions of dollars have just gone like that. And wasn't there supposed to be someone who comes in every like quarter and just checks out the place? Oh, you guys gotta, like, what happened to that? Just regular tracking of shit, you know?
Yeah. Minnesota Mao. That's what it is.
Give me that Minnesota Mao, man.
Yeah. All right.
No, man, I'm for real, man. You guys should subscribe to this. I'm only saying this because if you stick around this long to the end, why not subscribe at this point?
Might as well.
Might as well.